Okay, so hi everyone. I'm Ubik. My real name is Michele, but maybe all of you know me as Ubik. Even Ale calls me Ubik in real life. Um, he's not the only one. I'm one of the co-researcher from of DFOhub. Usually, I work on the documentation, on creating tooling to help us with the work we do, and recently, let's not say recently, but in the past month, I also worked on the economic side of things, especially on the whole emergency and the vampire attack and stuff like that. The presentation is called, of course, of vampires, snipers, and Buidlers, the security of the hub. As you can see, it's actually like a confidential report for only the Illuminati here at the Buidlerberg. Originally, there is a bit of a disclaimer. Originally, the presentation, I thought of it as I wanted to write like the history of the project, how I came in contact with the project, what I saw while I was working with Ale and Vaza. But then a lot of people started asking me questions about specific topics, so I decided that what I will be doing is actually answering this question the best of my capacity.
Great, yeah, it'd be good to clear some things up.
Yeah, so the question were mostly like on what I define as the arch enemies of the DFOhub, and we have three. I would talk about three of our arch enemies today. The first one is Julian, the mythical Julian. The
Julian.
second is the problem of the tooling with the DFOhub, not really the DFOhub per se, but solidity. What we like the lack of tooling that we found when working with solidity, which really, especially during September and October, really was a strain on like the documentation work and stuff like that. And then, of course, the rest of the presentation, which will like the largest part of the presentation, will be focused on the vampire and the history behind it, what we discovered, like what we thought going in, what we discovered while analyzing it, and the solution and the future of the problematic. So let's dive into it. So this is my secret report. So they are enemy. Let's start with why it is important to know your enemies. No, in the word of Gandhi from Civilization, whenever you are confronted with an opponent, conquer him with nukes. So know your opponent and destroy them, hopefully. So let's start with the first one, Julian. Well, what is Julian? If you're here at the Buidlerberg, you're probably like if you're one of the one in the know about the lore of the DFOhub ecosystem, you probably seen the name Julian thrown around, especially on Discord. You see that there may be a role that can be given. What is Julian? Julian, let's say that it is not important who Julian is, but what Julian became. Julian is a symbol of the enemy of the DFOhub. He is like the Fado incarnate. He was like this sort of like figure, anonymous persona at the beginning of Vid, even before my time. So it is not so important who he is really, because we don't know, of course, he's an anon. But what he did was basically trying to fund the project and other like shady stuff. So every time there's something which breaks, like if you remember the DevCon, the problem with the DevCon video, it's of course like it's of course always Julian fault. There are plenty in his like criminal record. There are a lot of crimes which are imputed to him, like fudging, hacking into DevCon servers, spreading false rumor, being a jerk on the Discord, especially being a jerk on the Discord. Like if you really are a jerk on the Discord, you will be receiving the Julian tag, which is worse than a ban.
It is really
from the project. Yeah, sniping. Like the sniping young coins out of existence, leaving Legos on the floor, hoping someone steps on them. Eating the last Oreos from Ale, another terrible crime. So what really is a Julian? Julian is not an individual. Julian is what the SCP Foundation would call like a memetic agent, something which spread through thoughts and words on the internet. Anyone can become a Julian. The only safety is like a functioning brain and the fact that we contain and quarantine all the Julian via role, and that we secretly dispatch of them with our secret commandos. So when you see the word Julian turn around, be reminded that you can become a Julian too if you start to like shit things. Someone
he kind of reminds me of Agent Smith or something. Like he's the eternal enemy,
exactly.
and he keeps reappearing in new forms.
Yeah. Exactly. So you can never kill him. He will always come back. Someone asked on the Discord if we knew really whether the Julian, the original King Julian, was related to the sniping of Unify. Our official position is that we do not know, but the internal coroner analysis actually said that we're not certain that Julian was the sniper. However, while extracting the bullets from Unify bodies, we saw they were marked with a J and a crown. So make of this what you want. So then there was the second enemy. The second enemy was actually solidity itself, because it may sound strange, like we do work with solidity, of course, because we are writing smart
know your enemy.
Exactly, know your enemy. But the problem is not like solidity per se as a language, but the fact that solidity is a relatively young language, and one which is still evolving really fast, especially since we are not in a like officially stable release. It's not like we have a Solidity 1.0 market as a stable release. So this leads to several problems when working with the language. Sometimes you don't have the feature that you have in other languages due to the limitation of for instance, the Ethereum virtual machine. Like think about the fact that we cannot use like float arithmetic, so we have to use integers and stuff like that. We have to be really, really careful when we do operation with the decimals. So even like taking the square root of a number, it's actually a complex operation, which is something that in other like programming languages is like simple arithmetics. But here, when I say that we had the problem with Solidity, I'm not saying like we had problem developing directly with Solidity, but the problem actually lie in the ecosystem. When we talk about a programming language ecosystem, we talk about all the libraries and tooling that surround the language, and that makes working with actually like a nice experience. The problem, as I said, that is that Solidity is relatively new in terms of, for instance, like let's say like Python, which I'm wearing the sweater, is actually and even Python considered a young language, even though it's like 20 more than probably 20 years old at this time. So think of that Solidity. I can't remember the year when Ethereum and Solidity were released to the public, but I do not think that they are like older than 10 years. So it's really, really young. This leads to the fact that there is not so many tooling, and that most of the tooling that there are around the Solidity, some of them, a large portion of them, are not maintained because they were like they are stuck in what we call the prototype limbo, which is when a project that tries to solve an issue cannot really become like a full-fledged product because the developer maybe tried to jump on the wagon of this new technology, but then he got bored or maybe he moved on, so he left the project like to die. And so many of these projects are not really like either up to date or complete. And the one which are most likely to be complete are usually like bug-ridden. They have more bug than Cyberpunk, and this is telling you a lot. Like
I didn't know that was even possible.
Yeah, trust me, we filed like don't remember, like when we started using there was this tool with documentation. We started using it, and like after a week, we were like, okay, let's open like 3 issues on GitHub to the to the people developing it, and the people developing were Open Zeppelin. So it was not like they were like a small team. It was one of the largest organization in terms of code, like code experience and stuff like that in the Solidity ecosystem. So this really slow down the, like say, the development process, because most of the time you have to reinvent the wheel and do all the stuff on your own. Personally, I think there are 3 critical areas when working with Solidity right now, which is the first one is what I was working on, which is the automatic documentation generation. Basically, when most of the modern programming languages, when you develop in them, you can use some sort of comment to document your code, and these comments can be later used by documentation engine to automatically create the technical side of documentation that you see, for instance, in Reddit docs, and you can see in our project. This is very important, especially I think with Solidity, because while normally your code may have bugs. If you have bugs on a smart contract, it becomes really hard to fix, even though the whole idea of the DFOhub is that usually you can still, work with the DFO protocol. You can still like change and fix bugs after you deploy the smart contract, which is something which
due to
usually
the microservices core, right? You can sort of edit
exactly
any
like
specific.
we did it. Like if you remember the art switch, or when we had to change the name of the USD, basically what we did was like fixing bugs or changing the smart contract. So the protocol allows it. However, we try, of course, not to rely on this capacity and to build the best software we can, like out of the box, because even though we can do it, it's best if we don't. So the mere fact that whenever we have to make this kind of like alteration to deploy the smart contract, we have to pay for them. It's actually like a very expensive operation. Like you can do it, but fully on chain, which is the promise of the whole DFO and microservices idea, but it's still problematic. And so,
will that change with version 0.5? I know that some things will become cheaper with version 0.5.
Something will become cheaper because we've got better at doing. We basically garnered more experience with the protocol ourselves, so we will be optimizing the protocol. But the problem remains that whenever you are developing Solidity, even if you're outside of the DFO, especially if you're outside of the DFO protocol like protection, you will probably have to interface with the code from other people, and if that code is not fully documented, of course the probability of creating bugs rises, because it's harder to understand maybe like the code and what it does. And so having automatic documentation is especially useful for us as the FAO, because we are building an ecosystem, and to be really, let's say, like prosperous as an ecosystem, we have to offer ourselves for integration. Like one of the cool thing about this event, the Buidlerberg, is that there are a lot of projects which are not developed by us, the core team, but are actually like from, like say, third parties. But these third parties have to interface with us, and the only way they can do it is either via the code and the technical documentation, or asking us directly. If we can create like beautiful technical documentation, which is the whole like point why a movement like the Rise Docs movement exists, is that having technical documentation makes it easier for project to be successful, and especially project that have as their scope to be like a sort of backbone for other projects. So this is one of like a real critical area, and this is one of the main problem I see working with Solidity today. Then we have testing. Testing is actually better as a better, like say, prospect than the program documentation, because at least the libraries are actually useful. The problem is that what you cannot do with the testing in smart contract, and is also one of the reasons why, under the Responsible DeFi manifesto, we say do not trust audit as like an absolute, like, arbiter of truth on the whether a project is good or bad. Because what you cannot really test is what we call like the integration or complexity of your project. For instance, let's say you are developing a DeFi protocol. You have to keep in mind, for instance, that flash loan are a possibility, and that flash loan attack are things, and you have to test for them. You have to be sure that you're not vulnerable to like flash loan attack and stuff like that, or even that. And then there is the thing that you cannot do and you cannot test, and that is that you cannot, of course, test for something which is not here today. Like you are developing a DeFi protocol before flash loan are invented, and when flash loan came out, you basically discover that you have like a bug or something. You are vulnerable to this kind of attack. One of the cool things about the protocol is that it allows us to eventually be resilient to this type of stuff, since we can like improve ourselves. We can grow our protocol by improving it via the microservices, but still you cannot really test them. And then you have also the problem that sometimes there is a discrepancy between testing in testnet and testing in mainnet. Sometimes testnet does not even work, which is the case, for instance, in like the past few weeks. There were problem on Ropstein, like there were like gas limits, and you basically could not test, for instance, DFO and stuff like that, because like you were hitting the gas limit, because there were like technical problem with Ropstein itself. And then you have sometimes the problem, like for instance, when we built Unify, we want, of course, to test the integration with Uniswap, but Uniswap, while it offers like the interfaces and stuff like that on Ropstein, it actually has no market there, because like Ropstein is like a placeholder. And so if you need to test like if your project work under normal market condition, you cannot really do it on Ropstein. And then you also have another like a whole side of a project, was maybe they don't have anything deployed on testnet, or the thing that they have deployed on testnet do not behave the same way in mainnet, which was the case for Tether, and where we have a problem like integrating Tether in with the USD, because the Tether contract on testnet behave in a way, and then when you test them, when you deploy them in mainnet and you integrate with them, they behave in another way. Like Vaza, as when Vaza found out, it was like, oh god, they like don't even like work the same way between test and mainnet. Then we have the last problem, which is something we are actually working on, which is the lack of front-end front-end frameworks. What I mean by lack of front-end framework, I mean like a framework which help the user and the developer create like a bridge between the front-end experience of using framework like React and interfacing with the Web3 data and the on-chain data and stuff like that. This is problematic because the only thing that like tries to be a framework was Drizzle, by the same company that does Truffle and Ganache, which are actually very useful testing suite. Drizzle wanted to be this sort of like framework which helped you by giving you React components and bridging the gap between the on-chain and the front end. But in the end, saw that the project was like really almost a prototype. The components were not much, and they were really, really basic in terms of feature, while requiring you to adhere to a strict, let's say, like set of rules to be compliant with the framework. So we saw that this was a problem, and this is something that we decided to be working on, especially for the future, because we believe that having this sort of framework would empower like a user or someone who maybe want to create a DFO. For instance, right now, if you have to code the front end of your DFO app, it's problematic because you have to do everything by hand, like we do. We have a sort of in-house framework which was developed by Vaz, but even then we need to rethink the sort of like framework, because it's something that the believe the space and the ecosystem needs, like all the documentation. It's something that we need for us to develop like in a quicker way, and we believe it's also needed for other people. Sorry, I have to sneeze. Yeah. So these are like the three main issues that we face when dealing with this sort of like in-house enemy, which is solidity. But we're working on them. I think that the only one which cannot be really solved, and is something that we simply, as developer, like every developer in the Solidity ecosystem has to keep in mind, is the testing problem. And this, also, of course, is related to our DeFi, the responsible DeFi manifesto in general. Like we could like generalize to a responsible development manifesto, which is a build stuff that can be upgraded, and that even if it fails, it's not like it does not fail in a catastrophic way. Like try to work in a way, because we have to keep in mind that the Ethereum space is adversarial in nature, as we will see soon with the example of the vampire. If it's something that can be done, and even if it's something that can be exploited, there will be people exploiting stuff out there. Because at the end of the day, if there is a bug on the smart contract, you'll probably make a lot of money finding it. It's not like if you find a simple bug in a Facebook page which crash it. Bugs in Ethereum tend to be costly for the users and for the developers. So always keep in mind that there are a lot of unknown, and that's why there are limits on testing, and there are limits on the power of auditing. As we always see when there are these sort of attacks and hacks, that's called hacks in DeFi space. This, of course, especially more common in DeFi, because in DeFi, whenever there is a higher economical incentive, you will see more people trying to exploit weaknesses, which is something that we will see right now. Because we now reach the third and final enemy, and the one which the presentation will focus on to its end, which is the codename Dracula. What is Dracula? Like all good horror stories, at the beginning, if I remember correctly, it was like October. During October, we started receiving a report from some of our like say stakeholder that they were seeing strange transactions in the Etherscan of the various pool that we had on Uniswap at the time. Which, as if you remember, we had like a very large Buidler Unify pool. And there were like this sort of strange transaction. They were like triangular arbitrage. At the beginning, we didn't really like pay attention to them, because we, as a policy, we do not let's say correlate too much the day-to-day financial like variation of the project, because being an R&D project means that we are more focused on building the tech than dealing with the finance and tokenomics and stuff like that. Like we do design it, but it's not like the core of what we do. And so we tend to be not so much like hands-on like other project on the whole like handling of this sort of stuff. But of course, since we saw an increment of this sort of like report, we started to go like on a yellow alert, because while we do not strictly care for the price of the token, we do care that the people who stake, for instance, who participate in the liquidity staking, are not actually like losing money due to some issue with the protocol, either on our side, on the side of the protocol that we interface with. And so we started like to pay attention to this, and we saw that there were in fact this sort of triangular arbitrage being done continuously on most of our what we call the cross pair. For instance, like a cross pair is defined as a pair between two custom ERC20, and you will see why I say them that they are custom. Because while we were looking at the code on Uniswap, because we were very interested in the Uniswap front end, we stumbled upon this sort of like strange thing in the code. I remember I was in the office and was looking at the code, and I saw like that was this constant that was an array of values, and the values were like the name of some token. They were like the hard-coded tokens, I can't remember right now the whose token were, but they were like there was I think Amperforth, DAI, USDC, Ethereum, and there's something else, maybe Curve. I can't remember. Maybe Bet. I don't sincerely remember, but there were like these 6, 7 hard-coded.
Yeah, that was 6.
Yeah, the 6 hard-coded, tokens, and I looked up to Waza and Ale. It was like guys, I found something which is rather strange in the code base, and they were like, what? And I was like, yeah, there are these strange constants. So they started like looking at it, and we basically discovered that what the Uniswap team was doing was hard-coding these tokens in the routing, say in the front end of the routing. The routing is that when you go on Uniswap and you wanted to swap a pair of token, of course there should be a routing algorithm which creates the best route between all the Uniswap pools, giving you the best trade. Like what, for instance, like the how's it called? The 1-inch exchange thing does between dexes, what we discovered by taking a look at the front end was that they were not actually doing this sort of computation front end, but they were basically simply checking if a pair was had one of these if a token was paired with one of these privileged token, and if it was not, basically this pool were not seen by the routing of the Uniswap. They were not even they were probably we're not really sure on that, but most likely yes. They were not even used by the Uniswap info to determine the liquidity, the total liquidity of a pool, of a pair. This is of course bad because these had like a lot of implication. And the first time when we first raised the issue with the Uniswap team, and we wrote the Medium article, a black hole in Uniswap v2 front end router is draining the value of tokens. This was the name of the article that we wrote to put a spotlight on the issue. The problem was that at the time we believed that the value that was being drained was inside the token. It was like the fair value of the token that was being drained. We raised the issue with the Uniswap team, and the problem was that in their Discord, and they basically like shoot it down immediately, saying that it was simple triangular arbitrage. It was okay, and there were no real consequence. And we didn't really like the answer, nor the way they dismissed the stuff we brought, because even if we were probably wrong on the draining side of things, it was actually like worse than we thought. While we started analyzing the problem, I started running some simulation with a simplified scenario, and we saw that there were actually like even worse consequence than the apparent drain of the value. So to give a better a larger view of the problem, I have like this quote, like, we went down the vampire crypt only to find a robot of taxman, and you will see why. So everything started with the fact that in the Uniswap v2, they introduced what we call the cross-pair ERC20 pools, like if you remember in the Uniswap v1, the only pool you could have were all paired with Ethereum. and so there were no cross pull, like saying, for instance, like instead everything was like Buidler Ethereum, Unify Ethereum, Art Ethereum, stuff like that. However, during V2, they decided to implement this new feature, which allowed for the creation of this cross pool, like, for instance, Buidler Unify, Arte Buidler, Arte Unify, stuff like that. This was actually written even in their white paper. And the white paper, they basically said that they were doing this in order to free the user from having mandatory exposure, for instance, reducing, of course, gas fees for some of the very highly traded pairs like DAI USDC. This was done because if you could trade directly between DAI and USDC, of course, you had you were not obliged to basically incur in permanent loss due to Ethereum appreciating or depreciating in values, and you didn't. You basically had one less transaction to make, because, for instance, in V1, if you wanted to switch between DAI and USDC, you had, of course, to be routed through ETH, so you had to do DAI ETH at USDC. In V2, you could do this directly. However, and they do write it in the white paper, they knew that a proliferation of this sort of cross pair between RC20s would make it, they say, somewhat more difficult to find the best path to trade a particular pair. But routing could be handled and blah, blah, blah. The problem is that I think that here they were dismissing this sort of problem. And that's why you see the Spider-Man, memes of this. I sense a faint smell of danger here. Like in dismissing this, it was like, yes, there will be a problem, but there will probably be also a fix. As we will see, the problem did, in fact, of course, there was a proliferation of custom RC20 pair, especially, which is something which is especially common to the way the DFOhub staking mechanism works. And that's why we were one of the most, like, the worst hit project. But also, like, this basically has a lot of implication on the whole, like, DeFi ecosystem as well. So, as I said, the proliferation did happen, but the problem was that their routing solution stayed the same, which was basically not having actually a solution. What we did, let's say, like, as the number of pairs with the cross RC20 increases, the complexity of finding the best solution, of course, rises as well. The problem is that their solution to this was, let's just hard code some arbitrarily chosen set of token with which that will have, like, the priority when we do the routing calculation.
Yeah, so it comes down to really the core issue of decentralization, right? Like
exactly.
There were some, like, actual benefits for maintaining, like, a centralized list of routing tokens.
Yeah.
A little bit better for the user experience on Uniswap, for example. But it has its attendant problems as well.
Yeah, the problem was that there was no, like, official way to interact with this sort of process, and the process itself was not even disclosed by them. If I remember correctly, it was simply done. Let's say, like, in the front end of the code. Yes, the code is open source and anyone could, like, realize it. The problem is that who the hell is watching the code of the front end of Uniswap? Usually you integrate with the smart contract, not with their front end. The problem here was that the front end, while open source, was actually centralized, and it was mutable, not like a smart contract. Like a smart contract, you create something centralized in a smart contract, everyone can see, and then you cannot, like, change it after the fact. The problem with the front end is that the front end is in the complete control of the developer teams, which in fact puts it as a, like, single point of failure and a centralization point. We had a similar problem with Uniswap. you want to recall it, which was the problem of the list. The fact that when they introduced the list on Uniswap, they of course like set the Uniswap list as the default on everyone, but there were no real discussion or like process for which a token could be listed in the Uniswap list. I remember seeing in the Discord people asking it and nobody answered. Like they were asking, like, is there like a formal process to be integrated with your default list? The silence was the only answer. So we saw this behavior from them from time to time with this regard. The problem is that when you hard code some project in the routing, you are actually generating a whole new problem. The problem is that if you do not have an efficient routing algorithm, there are two things which happens. The two things is that you basically are creating inefficient exchange between pools, and this leads to two outcomes. The two outcome is that you are incentivizing a set of arbitrary token, because basically what you do is that there are less, for instance, let's take the actual real case, like Buidler Unify had a lot, the pair Buidler Unify had a lot of liquidity, had more liquidity than for instance, the Buidler and Unify pair. What happened was that the most of the trade were not routed correctly in the pair, and so volume in the, let's say, unseen pair, and the unseen cross pair is the pair which has no connection to these like 6 magnificent privileged token, was not seen by the routing algorithm, and almost nobody was using it, generating far less liquidity fee for the liquidity provider, and basically like shifting creating an incentive only to hold these 6 token. Because if you're not holding these 6 token as a liquidity provider, there are no incentive, for instance, in providing liquidity to under this setup. There are no incentive to provide liquidity in the cross pair, in the unified Buidler pair, because most of the fee would be sucked by for instance, the Buidler ETH pair and the Unify ETH pair. So you're not incentivized to hold one of them. You are actually like incentivized to split your position and still hold the ETH or one of the other 6 token, because you cannot simply say, I don't want to be exposed to either ETH or USDC or one of these 6 magical token. I just want to hold both Buidler and Unify and just provide it. You cannot. Or maybe actually you can, and it was something that we at the beginning we did because we were not aware of the issue. But if you do, it's like it's not efficient economically because you are losing money because you are not getting your liquidity fee. And this was the first problem. The second problem is that having this what we define as suboptimal routing, because it's not the most efficient routing, actually create a slippage premium. Basically, when you either sell or buy in the pool, in the pair, you are actually paying more slippage than you should. You're basically getting worse prices for either your buy or your sell operation. But this premium is actually like paid inside the pool. Basically, like you're adding more, let's say, liquidity to the pool. The problem is that this operation that we call leaving money on the table, because for instance, let's say you have Buidler and you want to swap Buidler for ETH, but most of the of the liquidity is in the Buidler Unify pool. An ideal operation would be like let's say swap some Buidler for Unify, and then swap the remaining Buidler for ETH and some Unify for ETH. Instead, what the Uniswap routing does is it says like, okay, you wanna swap Buidler for ETH? I only like point you directly to the Buidler ETH at pool, and you do all your transaction in this pool. The problem is that these transactions are not efficient, so the prices drops. Basically, you get a worse price for your Buidler. What this does is that basically you are leaving money on the table, and this money accumulates inside the pool, but they can be taken back from the pool. They can be like drained from the pool, and we will see why and how they are drained from this pool. One of these problem actually this creates an incentive to do arbitrage, because via an arbitrage operation you can basically re-equilibrate all the pool. You do what if you arbitrage between like say Unify F, Buidler Unify, and Buidler F, you can basically act as if you were the efficient algorithm, and you can siphon off this the value that people are leaving, this sort of extra money they are paying. There is, of course, another set of issue, which is that this whole process is affected by several external factors. For instance, like high transition cost means that in order to do the arbitrage, you have to have a much higher profit. And so there is more time for like extra liquidity to accumulate in a pair. But this liquidity, again, is not like real good liquidity. Is liquidity that the people are basically leaving there because their trade are suboptimal. And this may lead to other problem. The whole idea is that basically you are burning money. Every time you do a transaction on Unify in a pair, in a pool, you want to do not even in a pool, but you want to exchange tokens, and one of these tokens happens to have most of the liquidity in a pool which is not with one of the 6 magical tokens. What happens is that you get slippage, you get hit by these higher prices, and the higher prices mean that you are leaving money there, and you are paying actually. As I highlight here, you are actually paying for bots to arbitrage or pair back to equilibrium. That was the draining that we saw, that was the vampire. The vampire were sucking off this profit that was left there by people, and simply re-equilibrate all the pool, but they were taking the profit, which was actually, if people were doing the correct amount, the correct operation, would have belonged to the people doing to the user. Here, the user is basically paying someone else to re-equilibrate all the pool with each trade they do, which is something which we believed was a kind of sick, because again, it was related to this problem of centralization and the fact that nobody, no user, no project had any sort of like control of the process with which these 6 magical tokens were chosen. And so they were not only incentivized for the liquidity fee, but there were also basically like people who traded with the project that were not, who didn't have like most of their liquidity with the 6 magical token. They were actually like paying more. They were doing an efficient trade. This was like madness. This is really madness. So what actually we basically coming back to what they wrote in the white paper. In the white paper, they write that come si dice? Let's say the idea for them to create this sort of cross between ERC20 was that they wanted to reduce impermanent loss and exposure to F, and reduce the fee. But what they accomplish is only partial, and they introduce a new liability inside the system. Because yes, they achieved their goal. They did reduce the slippage, reduce the impermanent loss, because you were not obliged to keep F anymore. But they actually simply said, now this works, but not just with that, but with the 6 magical pair, because now you do have a reduced slippage and stuff like that, but only if you actually are using these pair which are optimized by the routing mechanism. If you're not using them, you are actually paying more, and if you are providing liquidity, you are not getting your fee. So it's even worse than V1. Actually, in this respect, the routing in V1 was way better than the RC20, because the custom RC20 routing can be done, but only if you can actually compute the correct routing. Otherwise, you basically have to I can't remember the outsource. You basically have to outsource the routing which equilibrate all the pool to someone else, and this someone else are these bots. And how the bots are paid is with the user money, and that is like a very like dangerous design, or maybe it's it can be a choice, but it is a choice that has to be like done in the open. Like there should be some control. If you cannot compute the correct routing algorithm, either stop using the custom RC20, or if you want to keep using them, then at least have like a transparent process for which you select whose token are like can benefit from your magical constant in your front end. Because I believe that there are other way in which you could handle this problem. For instance, the exposure to ETH could have been handled by using by either switching to a stable coin, seeing like for instance, let's say like you use the USDC as your own like bridge token. Of course, then you are relying on the stability of USDC, but at least you don't have any impermanent losses, because unless USDC collapses, it's always maintained at $1 by Coinbase. So you don't get any impermanent loss, or you can buy like protection via protocols like Open or other like options and hedging sort of protocols. And also this problem, like we saw it in the DFOhub space, because we were probably the first one doing large scale cross RC20, because this problem only appears when you have like a large share of your liquidity in the RC20 in like hybrid RC20 pair, like we did with the Buidler and Unify. The problem is that we are probably one of the first space in which you see this one, and going forward, this will either other people like realize this and simply rely on the 6 magical tokens, or whatever they will change into the future, or they will simply not be able to do this sort of like hybrid pool. And that's why we did the Uni emergency. The only fix for us was basically dissolving all the pool. And that's what we proposed to the community during the vote, if you remember, in the Uni emergency vote, because there are no solution. Someone in the Discord asked, are there any possible solution? Not unless you either fix the routing problem, or you change the whole architecture, like basing it off a single coin. This is not, of course, easy to do, but a system with this fixed means that the people who use the ADEX with these either ADEX or a front end with these syntax, they actually get a better trade. They get more profitable trade than the trade that are now available on the vanilla Uniswap front end. After running, we verified this, and we called the bot tax, and we verified during simulation that it was really the slippage that was lost. So the bot actually drained what people were basically like paying more. This premium that people were leaving on the table, this money that people were leaving around because they were given a better trade by Uniswap. This was what the bot was draining. So more than a vampire, we were actually working, as I said, with a robot taxman, It was actually a robot that was collecting taxes in order to like build the correct road between the pool. And also there what the bot does is that it actually acts as a bridge between the pool that are in the relation. So if for instance imagine the pool as a triangle. On the two sides of the triangle you have what we call the exit pool and the entry pool, which are for instance like Buidler Ethereum and Unify Ethereum. And then on the other side of the triangle you have the cross pair like Buidler Unify. If you have a lot of liquidity in Buidler Unify, what the bot does is that whenever, for instance, someone pump by buying in the Buidler Ethereum, for instance, someone comes in with Ethereum and buy Buidler, what happens is that the bot will sell some Buidler. Will basically like actually it goes in the Unify, buys Unify, sell the Unify in the pool, and then takes some Buidler and sells some Buidler. So for each pump, everything will pump a bit. Like the pump in one of the exit pool will be reduced because there will be some selling by the bot. The bot will basically like sell the extra amount that should not have been there. But what it does is actually like by shifting this extra money around, it can like extract this extra money. So it's not actually draining the liquidity provided by the liquidity provider, but it's draining this liquidity that is added by the people. Because every time you swap in Uniswap and you pay the slippage as well as the fee that you pay to the liquidity fee is paid by leaving money inside the pool. And so the bot actually drains this sort of pool by paying this bot tax. We did the simulation, and you can do it as a mental experiment. It's napkin math. It's not easy. It's not hard to demonstrate. We did it. Actually, we did it in a more complicated and complex way by using a Python script, because we also tested that by repeating this process, whether the pool converges to a sort of equilibrium or not, and it was complicated. But the main idea remains that we can confirm numerically that this solution, the current state of Uniswap, is actually bad for the users. Like if you as a project have this rely on as a source of liquidity on this cross pair, it's actually really bad for the user who swap your token, and also the liquidity provider who provide the token, because they get the trade done by the bot does not generate the same amount of liquidity fee that would be generated by the call it the ideal trade, of course, in the cross pool. It generates more fee in the exit node of your graph, of your triangle, but it doesn't generate enough fee in the all these extra fee are actually taken from your cross pair. So basically, once again, it's incentivizing any project to only have liquidity with the 6 token, which again goes against the whole spirit of having something which truly decentralized, because there's actually here a team which controls the pair which receive this benefit. We raised this issue in the Uniswap Discord. Was dismissed. My recommendation, and is also what I said to Ale, and then again was the idea behind the emergency, is that the only true solution to this right now, under the current let's say configuration of Uniswap and various DEXs, is simply using Uniswap but keeping all your liquidity with Ethereum. Basically treat Uniswap as if it was Uniswap v1. And I'm not even recommending using on Uniswap any other of the magical token, because it's again, since there is no process, there is no information on how these tokens are chosen. you can relatively be sure that Ethereum, being the main, let's say, token of the ecosystem, will always be privileged, and that makes sense. But any other token, you cannot really say it for sure. There is no fix. I believe no fix will come from not anytime soon from the Uniswap team, the official team, and but I do know that other people, other third parties, are working on it, either by inventing new dexes or by reinventing the front end. So hopefully, we will soon be able to at least either have an alternative to Uniswap, or a better routing for the actual Uniswap, because it's a matter of front end. It's not a matter of changing the back end of the contract now. But if you cannot have a smart routing, which takes in account all the pool, or at least something which can approximate the best route, you will always get worse trade by basically paying more or receiving less from when you sell, let's say, your token. And again, to answer the people on Discord, no, there is no fix. Not from like Uniswap, the official tip, not that we are aware of, unfortunately.
Although I think we'll have to wait and see, but I think that one of the presentations later is being done, made by someone associated with Uniswap, and I think he might be working on a front end for Uniswap that, to some degree, resolves the issue.
Yeah, but then again, it's not the an official solution. It's not something which is worked on by the core Uniswap team. It's like a third party working on a better front end. If I remember correctly, it should be the Penguin party, if I'm not mistaken, because they are aware of this issue, and we confronted with them, because they of course wanted to bring light to it, because it's actually a problem with the ecosystem of Uniswap and stuff like that. So. But I will leave to them the issue. Like the fix, I believe that there are two possible fixes. As I said, either you basically rethink the DEX, or you fix the routing, and both solutions are perfectly valid. The problem is what will be that both of these solutions will not be, in my opinion, done by the official Uniswap team, but will be third-party solution. And I think that this is a missed opportunity for the Uniswap team to tackle this problem of centralization that they do have, because even though in their culture they say that they are truly are decentralized and stuff like that, in practice they often make this sort of like shady decision. For instance, like the least one, it's once again the same problem. Like, who is choosing this token? What is the criteria? Is it just like the top 6 in volume? Is the top 6 in market cap? What is the criteria? Is there even a criteria, or they simply like chosen? Because we saw a lot of hard-coded stuff inside the Uniswap front end code, and that's why we are wondering whether there is like some sort of like objective process, or if it is done on a case by case like situation. The problem is there is no transparency, but there is an issue.
Yeah, it's interesting how projects will talk about decentralization, but usually they don't make it explicit that they're referring to a spectrum of decentralization.
Yeah.
Whereas DFOhub aims for like maximum decentralized without any kind of compromise.
Yeah. If you think about it, at the end of the day, the Uniswap team is a company, with VC founding. So it's they can say that they are truly decentralized and stuff like that, but at the end of the day, they are not truly decentralized, because they do have a central team. Their team do have complete control over the front end. In our protocol, even the front end is up to the community and the people who actually hold the equity and the token, because the token and the equity are the same thing. Here, the people are the VC that control the stuff that they do. They have direct control over the code, and not just the code of the smart contract, but even the code of the front end, because they can decide which front end is the official front end of a DFO and its DApp, But this is not the case with all the other DApp, or even, for instance, like the DApp that use Aragon, another system which are DFO-like, but actually they have like the same appearance of true decentralization, but they do like the substance, because there's always a central team controlling the project. And in the DFO space, I believe tomorrow Ale and Vasa will talk about some of these the thing, even like some thing that people sometimes say about the DFOhub team has control over the project. Like, yes, we do. We are completely transparent that we, as of now, we do own the ownership of the project, because we do have the controlling votes and stuff like that to make the changes. Because if you want to build something, you actually do need to have this sort of power. But then again, our protocol allows in any moment to just release it, either gradually, or if, for instance, we let's say tomorrow the whole DeFi thing become illegal all over the world, and no team can ever develop it. Okay, we as the FAO can simply say, okay, no problem, we can no longer develop it because maybe we have, I don't know, say the Interpol watching us. No problem. We simply make it completely decentralized in a click of a button, and we give control to the token holder in all the respect. We basically relinquish our control. We can do it any moment. We do need, of course, the control, because, for instance, if you have to push an update, you cannot wait for a whole, like everyone has to vote. We need to reach the quorum. We actually have the enough token to handle this stuff on our own, because otherwise the velocity of the development would drastically reduce. But once the project is mature, which is the whole what Ale said at the beginning, the whole idea behind it is that we will relinquish control, but we are completely upfront about it. We are not masking ourselves behind, let's say, saying, oh yes, we are completely decentralized. Like, our protocol is completely decentralized, which is true for the protocol in the case of Uniswap, but they also want to sell the idea that even the management of this sort of stuff is completely decentralized, which is not true. And this is a fault with the traditional DApp protocol, in my opinion, which is that you cannot even, in the best case scenario, have complete decentralization. Like, we have as the FAO can relinquish control in any moment, but you as an Aragon developer, can you really say that, for instance, in a click you can completely give any aspect from the front end to the code to complete control over your protocol to the people who hold your token? I don't believe so. And if you cannot do this, then you will, in my opinion, inevitably end up in this situation where there are processes in which no one can intervene, no one can say anything about it, and the only one who controls the processes is a centralized team.
Just to be clear, could the Uniswap team or the Aragon team at any time hypothetically subvert their supposed decentralization to directly access and edit the code without using programmable equities or anything like that?
I mean, I do not know so much about it, but because I'm not an expert on Aragon, but from what I do know is that what you can control in Aragon DApp is actually limited to a set of a canned choice. Nobody has the FAO is having a control directly on the GitHub repo, because you can, by changing the FAO microservices, you change the code that has been deployed in the chain. You have direct control over the code. Via Aragon, you can express vote on things which the team then decide to work.
Yeah.
Let's say that everyone in Aragon votes for something which create like a poll, I don't know, for something which the core team doesn't want. I mean, who can stop it? You know, or any sort of DApp done in traditional way. Like there was a big issue in Curve when they implemented some Bitcoin, RAM Bitcoin, if I remember correctly, like pairs on the Curve DApp. This was a problem because the core team pushed it on the user, and nobody, even like if they didn't have maybe the governance and stuff like that, nobody could oppose it because they were the core team, and the core team had the complete control of the deployment and the smart contract. In the DFO, we know now that we as the DFOhub team have this control because since we are still building stuff, we need to have it. But for instance, if you take a look at a project like Bust, when the Bust DFOs was released, nobody had control. There was actually a problem for the Bust team because they set it up like in a bad way, and they were able to at the beginning to reach like the quorum needed to do their stuff, you know. Which is why we avoid this sort of thing in the beginning. But it has been like following the responsible DeFi manifesto, which, as I told you at the beginning, can be also thought as a responsible development manifesto. We believe that it is important to use protocols like the DFOs, which are truly decentralized protocols, and that in each moment you can like push, you know, push the big red button and say, okay, now everything is under the complete control of everyone. In our idea, if everything goes correctly, as Ale always says, in a couple of years, we may only be one of the team who develop and maintain the protocol. There may be other team that help us maintaining the protocol, you know. That is the power of the DFO protocol to me. But you cannot be
absolutely.
You will not always. You will never see the people. I think in the Uniswap team that decide that there will be other teams maintaining. You know, they coded together with us. You will not have control over it.
So I'm not sure if you had any more.
Yep.
If you have any more slides or if there's anything else you want to talk about, go ahead. Otherwise, we'll move to the Q&A.
Yeah, exactly. I'm liking now I'll take your question. You know?
Okay.
I'm sorry if we rambled a bit on the DFO, but I think this highlights the pros of the DFOs. You know, DFOhub both as a protocol, as a DFO protocol, but also as the culture of truly decentralized, everything, not just finance, everything. Decentralize all the things.
Yeah, no, don't worry, man. It's very interesting stuff. If we didn't have such a tight schedule, we could go on about it for a very long time, I'm sure.
So I cannot see if there are any questions, so I will now.
I can get the ones up on Discord.
Okay.
Okay. Here we are. Hey, Ali, welcome back.
The one that maybe I didn't respond to.
Hey.
I would say that I did the account of the tail of the vampire.
I think you did that pretty thoroughly.
What, Ale?
Your presentation was awesome. Totally. So, yeah.
On the Unify Sniper, we do only know that there were, the symbols on the bullet. We do not know anything else.
Yeah, all the circumstantial evidence points to a Julian crime, but we can't know for sure.
Whenever something bad happens, like if I hit, the pinky of the foot against something, it's probably due to Julian. It's Julian's fault. Everything bad in the world is Julian's fault. If it's rain and I forgot my umbrella.
I hope Aiden will watch your talk because there was a misleading stuff on 4chan when we publish the Unify stuff because people took our article and create on top of it a lot of Illuminati confirmed things like that Aiden is a bad guy and all of this stuff that we are totally not on this line. So I'm happy that you focus on these things and so pragmatically, mathematically, and not about all of the shit I read at the time on 4chan. And
I think that's the case with the article. The stuff is more like bad engineering, like the evil intention. It's usually easier to attribute something in the programming space to like bad engineering, in the sense that maybe they didn't know how to tackle the problem with routing. They decided let's like put this token, which probably are like the most traded, like sort of like let's hard code them because it simplify everything. It creates a better user experience, and I'm okay with it. But I think that they did as a mistake. They were not transparent about it. But I believe
sorry.
About it, not because they are like evil, as people like on 4chan said. Like, as you said, like the Illuminati confirmed.
I just wanted to say that, for example, in my personal opinion, differently from people saying online, they are trying to do their best. Okay, they're not evil, as you said, and stuff like this. The thing is. The thing is that this is about trying to find problems and to solve them, and so the problem of Uniswap right now is the unfair position that they have, but is a problem not just for users, but for the team too. Because, for example, if you run something like Uniswap, and that's the thing I totally wanted to say, there is some kind of issue that can stop them in the future that I don't like that they will stop them, like, for example, regulations of stuff. Because if you rule the front end in that way, so you basically are take an inconvenient position about the decisions of fees or trading and all of this stuff. So it's like the NASDAQ that say you, okay, I route you only with Tesla, Apple, and Netflix and Amazon stocks, and so you can easily trade, for example, other stocks. So, and I think they have to solve it to reach a better position when in the future, and someone will regulate them and will regulate the front end, because you can, if you host the front end as a company, regulators will come in the future, and so. My position is to talk with Aiden, talk with people, and say, let's try to find a solution for these things, because it's not about only users, not about only bot ducks, but it's about to don't take this kind of position that is inconvenient for you as a team too. So that's my assumption about this.
Like, if, as you said, some regulators come in and start saying stuff like, oh, but you are like choosing which token are listed or not, you are maybe doing like some sort of unfair incentives, you cannot do it anymore, you have to shut down. This would not be like an ideal situation.
That's kind of bad for all of the ecosystem effect.
Exactly, because then you do not have any team maintaining like the Uniswap code that doing cool stuff. So
yeah,
again, it's a problem of decentralization. If you're completely decentralized, nobody can stop you. But if you have some centralization point, people can and will eventually try and stop you. because
I think
if you have a
I
certain
think
point, they can control it.
this I think this will be the case. I read some articles about the new regulation in the US, but that's another thing. So
Yeah,
let's focus on the
that's
questions
probably
on Discord, and we can
Yeah.
talk about that later.
So I personally do not have any idea on who's the guy behind the mask, and the antipasti, maybe the antipasto, like one antipasto. I didn't understand the question, like KHSH.
Antipasti.
I do not really understand your question. Well, maybe
I just wanted
if
to
it is
say,
like,
do you
He's saying like
remember
he's the enemy of pasta to the Italians.
yeah, is it like the enemy? I don't know.
It's Julian.
I don't know.
It's
It's Julian. It's Julian. If it is a bad thing, it's Julian. If it is a good thing, it's probably either Ale or Vasa.
Yeah.
Or some an anonymous Buidler, of course, like the Buidler story.
I think.
Some good old Buidler.
Do you remember the Mario Torgini stuff from 4chan?
Yeah, I do remember it.
It was incredibly funny.
There was like an extra developer who was like killed by the mafia. Yeah. I remember also when we wrote on the wall like Je suis Torgini, Je suis Mario, what was it? And people were like, oh yes, they're trying to send a message that they are like ready to talk about the mafia involvement on the DFO, because this is a reminder of Je suis Charlie Hebdo, and that's a reminder for the freedom of speech. And I was like, people,
Yeah.
God damn it, why are you like,
That was a Vasa Power
ideas?
idea. Most of the ideas come from Vasa Power. He is like an oracle of ideas. So,
idea.
yeah.
One of my friends who
We are
isn't
more-
super familiar with actually messaged me saying, "Is it true that these guys have connections to the mafia?" Actually believe that's
I can read some sort of racism in that because we are Italian, so we are mafia by default. But yeah, that's okay.
I mean, we are Italian. We operate in DeFi or the decentralized finance ecosystem and decentralized anything ecosystem. So we are clearly recycling money,
Yeah.
We're clearly recycling. We are just a front end for the mafia, and that's why we do the all the hard work, because we have to keep up the appearance.
Yeah, DFOhub is just a shell company. Mafia.
Yeah, exactly. But like really well done. Like the code actually works and everything, but everything is like is actually like a front for a money laundering operation.
Yeah,
This is really us.
Sorry.
Did you like a tether in your throat?
So, by the way,
also there was the question like, where is Julian? Of course, Julian is in his own kingdom. He's in his own castle, plotting against us. That's what.
Are you sure that Julian is not Satoshi?
I don't know.
Could be.
We also had if I remember correctly, like one of the DFO, the anonymous one, maybe not past like the other one, the Farmed VC. Wasn't like Julian the farmer or Satoshi the farmer, one of the the founder.
Hi guys.
So maybe there are good Julians. I don't know. Maybe not all Julians are bad.
Maybe.
But I'm not
penguins
sure
that became penguin unicorns.
What? Sorry.
Penguins that became penguin unicorns.
Exactly. Like they were not deranged anymore. I'm probably one of the deranged DeFi penguins. Hi guys.
I guess that's all the questions. I don't think there's any currently on YouTube or Twitch.
I hope that's now we the story about the vampires has been cleared. And if anyone wants, I can like publish the code of the simulation. I will of course make the presentation available. In the presentation, you will have the details of the simulation. It's of course done as like a mental experiment, but you can easily like code it yourself, or maybe we can release this Python script. I don't know, but it's actually like simple logic and simple math to demonstrate our claims.
I think basically because it is here that we can try to work together on an article with all of the code, try to reach attention to the Uniswap team to try to work on this problem there too. I don't know if the Penguin Party want to help us or not, but
Yeah,
we can talk about this. I think
we do have already a
because
skeleton of an article.
because the Unimajesty things, in my personal view, when we talk about this, was about the idea to we can help to solve this problem. We can help to talk about this problem, but before that, we have to stop this problem for us, and then talk and help to improve. Because when you are in a position that you are dependent from this problem, you have less credibility and you have less and you have more anxiety in it than solving it. But when you are independent, it's easier to help and try to figure it out the right solution.
Yeah, exactly. Like at the time, we didn't really have even the time to consider this like the consequence, or we needed to fix it this problem for our project, and the only fix was reverting all back to that. Ale had the idea, and at the same time I was running the simulation. I was like, yeah, Ale, like you are completely right. Like let's revert back everything, because there were no really true other options long term, at least.
Yeah. You mentioned potentially using a stable coin instead of Ethereum as the single routing token.
Yeah,
would that be preferable?
I believe that if you revert back to the like V1 routing, like everything has to pass through a stable, then it will be preferable to having like Ethereum as a bridge coin, because Ethereum can appreciate or depreciate over time. So if you have liquidity in any pair, you have to hold some Ethereum. And if you hold Ethereum, you are subject to Ethereum volatility and you get more impermanent loss. If you simply hold a stable coin, assuming that the stable remains stable over time, then it does not appreciate. So you don't get any problem.